Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a new story, To the Top Pokémon Plus My Hero Academia, written by Kyodon. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin. Izuku. Ha. Izuku slowly opened his eyes, blinking rapidly as his eyes adjusted to the light that flooded his room from his window. Izuku. Wake up, you're late for when they give out the starters. He heard his mother shout from downstairs. It took a few seconds for Izuku's tired brain to register what his mother was saying, but when he finally did, his eyes went as wide as dinner plates and he immediately jolted up and looked at his Gallic alarm clock. 9 o'clock, an hour late. Panic filled Izuku's mind and body, as he quickly jumped out of bed to start getting dressed. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Izuku shouted as he moved as quickly as he could, taking off his pajamas and put on some real clothes. I must have accidentally pressed snooze on my alarm clock without realizing it. It took him about 2 minutes to finally get dressed, as he ran out of his room and down the stairs to his house where his mother was waiting. Izuku, what happened? Inko asked him worriedly as she saw her son rush for the door. I overslept. Have to go. Izuku opened the door and ran out, making his way towards Professor Nizu's lab. Today was possibly the most important day of Izuku's life, as well as the most important day of many other 15-year-olds' lives. Starter Day. It was traditional in Takoba Town, as well as many other towns and cities in the Muzutafa region, that when a child reaches 15, they would be given a Pokémon, and some would go on a Pokémon journey across the region. Izuku was so excited about it, that he really couldn't sleep at all the night before, leading to him waking up an hour late. It took about 20 minutes for Izuku to reach the lab. The crowd of kids that would usually be seen around the lab waiting for their starters, was nowhere to be seen. Professor. Izuku shouted as he ran into the lab. When he finally came to a stop, he started breathing heavily, exhausted after non-stop running for 20 minutes. I am here. Izuku looked around the entrance of the lab. No one was there. Ah, Izuku, you're late. From the back door of the homey white lab, Kamiya Pikachuthat talked and was wearing a suit. The Pikachu, or rather, Nizu walked up to Izuku, holding a cup of tea that was appropriate to his size. I know. I'm so sorry. Izuku bowed apologetically to the Pokemon professor. I got too excited the night before, and I stayed up too late so I overslept. Please forgive my tardiness. Well, unfortunately, while I do forgive your tardiness, there will be consequences nonetheless, Nizu revealed. You see, we've run out of starters. Izuku felt his heart sink to his stomach, and all the excited, positive energy immediately drained out of him. Oh. He had had a bad feeling that that was the case when he woke up late. But it was still crushing to hear. Now don't despair. All you have to do is wait for us to obtain more. This could take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months, but you will get your starter. Nizu reassured him. You just need to have patience. Alright. Sorry, sir. Izuku sighed, still slumped over dejectedly. I'll go home now. Sorry for wasting your time. When Izuku left, Nizu sighed and took a sip of his tea. Poor boy. At least when he does get his starter I know he'll do well as a trainer now. Back to those strange readings. Meanwhile, Izuku walked back home in a slump. The disappointment was very visible on his face. 2 months. I have to wait 2 months. That means I'm gonna be 2 months behind the Pokemon League Challenge. Izuku thought. The Pokemon League Challenge. The event that every trainer worth their salt wanted to attend. A tournament that could only be attended by those who had traveled the region, and won every gym badge, and the winner got the chance to take on the Elite Four, and then the champion to take the title for themselves. It had been Izuku's dream to take on that tournament since he was little, and he'd been eagerly awaiting today for most of his life. And he'd blown it. So now he'd have to wait even longer. Great going Deku. Izuku chided himself. Kaken's gonna, Deku. shouted an all too familiar voice. Oh no! Izuku winced. As Izuku was walking through the fall town, he was so dejected and sad, that he didn't notice he'd walked past the house of one Bakugo Katsuki, who was just leaving. Where the F were you when we were getting the F starters? Bakugo shouted at Izuku. Ah! Kaken. You see he was late. Izuku admitted sheepishly. You what? Bakugo shouted, getting up in his face to really hammer in his anger. Yeah, I messed up. Izuku sighed. Now I have to wait 2 months before I can get a starter. TCH, whatever. Bakugo backed up a bit, still glaring at Izuku like he always did. Not like it'd make a difference. 2-month gap or not, I still would have kicked your butt. Bakugo then stepped back and took out a Pokeball, before releasing the Pokemon inside. Out of the Pokeball came a Charmander. Wow! Is that a Charmander? Izuku asked, admiring the Pokemon in front of him. No, it's AF Cyndaquil, Bakugo shouted sarcastically. Of course it's AF Charmander. The Charmander noticed Izuku admiring it, and struck a proud pose. Man, don't look so pleased with yourself. Deku would do that to any Pokemon. Bakugo scowled, before returning Charmander back into the ball. So you really are gonna be a fire-type specialist? Izuku said, looking at Bakugo ecstatically. Duh. Bakugo rolled his eyes. I told you that SHT years ago. Type specialist. In the world of Pokemon, some people simply felt attuned to a certain type as opposed to others. As such, these people would only catch one type of Pokemon. Type specialists are incredibly common, and most gym leaders and Elite Four members have been type specialists. Well, I'm gonna get back to training. I don't want to waste time talking to a worthless idiot like you. Bakugo huffed, as he turned away, and walked back into his house. Izuku sighed. It was nice talking to you too, Kaken. Just as Izuku was about to walk back home, he heard something. Who? He heard cheers coming from the middle of town. Izuku turned towards the noise. What's that? Deciding to investigate, Izuku ran towards the source of the noise. XXXXXXXX turns out, the source of the noise was a massive crowd, consisting of almost everyone in town. Izuku made his way through the crowd, and his jaw dropped when he saw what it was the town was crowding around. In the center of the town, standing under the stature of the town founder and his Zigzagoon, was the champion of the region. All Might. Ahahaha. Greetings, citizens. I am here. All Might shouted out, his deep voice, his figure loomed over the entire crowd, as he waved at everyone. All Might. Izuku was one of the many people screaming the champion's name. Izuku had idolized All Might and his Pokemon ever since he could remember. All the children did. He was undoubtedly the strongest champion in existence, and he used his great power to help the people of the region. He was admired by all, and all trainers aspired to be even half as strong as he was. Hello, people of this fair town. I have come here because of reports of a strange and dangerous Pokemon that has been causing trouble. All Might explain to the people. Mutters and whispers broke among the townspeople. A strange and dangerous Pokemon, I wonder what it is. Izuku couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and fear. On one hand, he would really like to see what Pokemon was powerful enough to warrant All Might's attention. On the other hand, that also sounded like an easy way to die. I would like for everyone to go home for the night, while I search for this Pokemon. All Might told everyone. Now, if you excuse me. All Might then took out a Pokeball, and released his Golurk. I must be off. All Might hopped onto the massive Pokemon, as the Golurk retracted its arms and legs, and took off into the air like a rocket as fire exploded out of the holes. Izuku watched the powerful Pokemon and the champion rocketed off. The crowd then started muttering to each other. Murmurs of fear, and talk of following All Might's advice. Slowly the people started to disperse, and Izuku figured that he should probably head home too. If All Might says it, then I should definitely listen. Izuku thought as he resumed walking home, now with a smile on his face. Still, I can't believe I got to see him in person. He's even bigger in real life than on TV. Izuku continued to think about All Might, taking his mind off his current lack of starter. However, as he made his way home, he passed the entrance to route the only way out of the town, and a place where various wild Pokémon could be found. Despite adults saying it was dangerous, he and the other kids had played there plenty of times, meeting all sorts of Pokémon. I should probably stay away from there for now. Don't want to bump into that dangerous Pokémon. Izuku thought to himself as he walked past it. But then, out of the corner of his eye saw something pink and fury rustling around in the tall grass. A Pokémon. Izuku couldn't help but stop and stare at whatever was coming out of the grass. Slowly, but surely, a pink Eevee limped out of the grass, and into Izuku's sight. Whoa! An Eevee! Izuku exclaimed in excitement. And a pink one. Not even shiny Eevee are pink. This must be some unique variant Pokémon. However, this turned out to be a mistake, as Izuku's shout caused the Eevee to jump a bit, wincing as it landed on its obviously injured leg, before hustling into the tall grass. Darn it! I'm such an idiot. Izuku chided himself, before thinking back to the Eevee. Wait, that Eevee looked injured. Could it have been that powerful Pokémon? Or maybe it was some poachers after it for their unique color. Wait. It could be in danger. And just like that, Izuku threw caution to the wind, and ran into the grass. XXXXXXXXXX Izuku ran into the woods that was route searching relentlessly for the pink Eevee. Come on. Come on. Please still be okay. Izuku walked around the woods, eventually reaching a cliffside where the pink Eevee was located, pawing at the wall as if trying to climb it. But with its injured leg, it wasn't going to get very far. Okay, Izuku. Don't startle them Slocum Serene. Izuku told himself, as he slowly approached the clearly terrified Pokémon. Snap! Eevee looked at Izuku, and Izuku looked down and saw that he stepped on a twig. Darn it! The strangely colored Pokémon turned around, huddling against the cliffside looking at Izuku with fearful eyes. Hi! Izuku gave the Pokémon the friendliest smile he could muster and kneeled down to make himself look less threatening. I am not here to hurt you, I want to help you, I can bring you to a Pokémon Center. They can heal you. The Eevee stayed where it was, however its eyes looked slightly less fearful. Izuku's smile became more genuine. Yes. Progress. Just as Izuku was about to utter more reassuring words, however, he heard a masculine voice in his head. Finally, I found you again. Suddenly Izuku got a chill down his spine, and he felt a threatening aura, right above him. He looked up, and saw a strange Pokémon, floating there using presumably psychic power. It was mostly white, with a long purple tail. Cat-like but humanoid at the same time. It looked off. Not like any other Pokémon Izuku had seen before. And it exuded power like nothing Izuku had ever felt. The Pokémon glanced at him for a moment, before speaking in his head using telepathy. Child. I am Mewtwo. The most powerful Pokémon in existence. You have exactly 1 second to flee from that creature before I end it, and everything around it. It talked. Only one type of Pokémon could ever speak, at least consistently. And given their power, there was no doubt about it. This Mewtwo was a legendary Pokémon. Most people would have done as Mewtwo said, and run away as fast as they could. And Izuku did just that, but not before scooping up the Eevee in his arms. Izuku ran as fast as he could with the shaking, terrified Eevee nestled against his chest. He made it a good distance too. But then suddenly in a flash of light, Mewtwo appeared in front of him, using teleport. Izuku quickly stopped and tried to turn and run the other way, before his body was covered in a purple aura, and was lifted off the ground. Humph! Mewtwo raised its arm, opening its three-fingered hand, and forming a ball of otherworldly, dark energy. Shadow Ball. If you wish to die with this Pokémon, then so be it. Izuku closed his eyes, and wrapped himself around the Eevee, hoping that somehow his body could shield it against an attack from such a powerful Pokémon, as Mewtwo threw the Shadow Ball at Izuku and Eevee. Cobalion. Use Protect. Shouted a familiar voice from the thicket. Suddenly, Cobalion burst out from the trees, running in front of Izuku, before acting a rainbow-colored barrier. The Shadow Ball hit the barrier, exploding against it, but doing no damage. Izuku opened his eyes, and saw his legendary savior, standing in front of him valiantly. Cobalion, but then that means dash, it means that I am here. Izuku looked behind him, and saw the champion, All Might, standing there. Izuku watched as All Might walked in front of him, putting some distance between him and the violent legendary. All Might. That's my name. All Might turned his head towards Izuku, giving him a thumbs up and a glimmering smile. Don't wear it out. Toshinori, pay attention to the battle at hand. This Pokémonothus Thingit exudes power like that of the one spoken of in legends. Cobalion warned his trainer. So it's a legendary Pokémon. All Might surmised. This matter does not concern you. Mewtwo used Psychic to lift 3 nearby trees, uprooting them and bringing them into the air. Be gone. Mewtwo threw the trees at Cobalion, who stood ready to counter the attack. Cobalion, Sacred Sword. All Might ordered. The black part of Cobalion's head glowed, as a blade grew out of it. Cobalion then used that blade to slash the trees apart, into tiny pieces. Now, use Air Slash. All Might followed up with another attack. Cobalion's sword glowed white as it slashed the air, sending out a wave of razor-sharp air at Mewtwo. The attack landed, and Mewtwo was blown back a few feet. Growling, Mewtwo shook its head as it recovered from the attack. The attack hurt more than he had anticipated. He glared at Cobalion, before it created a purple ball of energy in its hand, and threw it at Cobalion. Enough. That's Aura Sphere. Izuku realized. Did he realize that Cobalion is a steel type? Cobalion, dodge and use Magnet Rise. All Might told his Pokémon. The leader of the Blades of Justice obeyed, jumping to the left to avoid the Aura Sphere before electricity started to crackle off of it, and Cobalion rose into the air, now at the same elevation as Mewtwo. Now use Aerial Ace. All Might ordered. Using the power of magnetism, Cobalion moved through the air, its sword glowing as it came towards Mewtwo with extraordinary speed. Just as Cobalion reached Mewtwo and was about to slash it, Mewtwo teleported behind Cobalion and raised its hand to charge up a big blue ball of energy. That's Focus Blast. Izuku noted. And at that range, there is no way it can miss. All Might's face showed no worry whatsoever though. Protect. A barrier of rainbow energy formed around Cobalion, as Mewtwo slammed the attack into it, causing an explosion. But when the smoke died down, Cobalion was just fine, its Protect having completely nullified the attack. Now. Counterattack with Megahorn. All Might said. Cobalion's sword grew out of its head once more, but this time it was bright green, as he quickly turned his head, and slashed Mewtwo behind him. Gah! Mewtwo was knocked down onto the ground by the strong, super effective attack, creating a crater from just how strong the impact was. Now Air Slash on repeat. All Might said, not giving Mewtwo a moment to rest. Cobalion's sword glowed white, as it unleashed a barrage of air slashes at the psychic legendary. Mewtwo used Protect, creating a barrier to defend against the attacks, before using Psychic, covering Cobalion in a purple aura, before he slammed him into the ground. Ack! Cobalion winced in pain as it was smashed into the dirt. Mewtwo, thinking this was an effective strategy, raised its arm, using Psychic to lift Cobalion high into the air, before bringing it back down. Metal Burst. All Might shouted before Cobalion hit the ground. Cobalion's body glowed before it suddenly became covered in metal, and when it hit the ground, the metal broke apart off of its body and flew at Mewtwo. Gah! Mewtwo shouted out in pain as the metal shrapnel hit its body, doing almost twice the damage his own attack did. This freed Cobalion from his hold, as the steel/fighting type got to his feet. Now use Poison Jab. All Might shouted. Cobalion charged towards Mewtwo, its hooves growing purple, before smacking Mewtwo repeatedly with them. Gah! Mewtwo was knocked back a bit before it turned back to Cobalion with a look of smoldering anger in his eyes. The psychic type raised its hand, and then suddenly the ground began to rumble, disrupting Cobalion's balance before it was suddenly hit by the ground rising up around him. Earthquake. Izuku recognized the move. Ball. Cobalion was knocked back by the super effective move, as it started breathing heavily, its body having some visible wounds on it now. To do that much damage to Cobalion, and to take this many hits for that matter. This Pokémon is far too powerful and violent to be left alone. I have to catch it. All Might thought. Cobalion used Magnet Rise. Cobalion's body crackled with electricity, and just as he was about to get into the air, Mewtwo's body suddenly emitted a black, swirling energy, and Cobalion was immediately forced back down to the ground. But it wasn't just Cobalion, everyone in the area suddenly felt a mysterious pressure weighing down on them. This is gravity. Izuku said as he noticed the Eevee trembling in his arms. Hey, it's gonna be okay. Eevee. Eevee looked up at Izuku, as he managed to give the strangely colored Pokémon a calming smile. All Might is here. So everything is going to be alright. Izuku told the Pokémon, as they looked up to him with wide eyes, shimmering with hope. All Might smiled hearing everything Izuku just said. That's right, young man, there is no need to worry. I'll take care of this in just a moment. Humph, fools. Mewtwo raised its arm, as it unleashed another earthquake at Cobalion. Protect. All Might called out. Cobalion used Protect once more, shielding itself from the earthquake, but as soon as the move went down, Mewtwo's body glowed white for a moment. That was Disable, wasn't it? All Might grit his teeth, knowing that without Protect and Magnet Rise his options for dealing with ground-type moves were limited. Cobalion use, Smart Strike. Cobalion's body glowed with Steel-type energy, as it charged at Mewtwo at lightning-fast speed. Mewtwo teleported a few feet away, but Cobalion course-corrected immediately, and crashed right into the Psychic type, hitting it in the stomach. Ack! Mewtwo gasped as it got hit hard, but ultimately, it toughed it out, and grabbed Cobalion by the neck, before raising its arm, and creating a focus blast. Seeing where this was going, All Might called out Cobalion's next move. Metal Burst. Cobalion covered himself in steel once more, as Mewtwo hit him with a point blank. Boom! There was a big explosion, forcing All Might, Izuku, and Eevee to look away and cover their eyes for a moment before it started to die down. When the smoke cleared, Mewtwo was on one knee, heavily injured, and Cobalion was on the ground. Cobalion. All Might shouted out in both shock and concern. He knocked out Cobalion. But that's All Might's ace. Izuku was beyond shocked, he was stupefied. Completely stunned. How could this Pokémon be so powerful? All Might grit his teeth, as he picked up Cobalion's Pokeball. The Pokeball shot out a red beam that engulfed Cobalion, making him turn red and bringing him back into the Pokeball. Mewtwo meanwhile was getting back up on his feet, wincing from the pain. DMNU. To make me go so far. Then, Mewtwo's body was covered in a green healing aura, as some of its wounds started to mend. Recover. Izuku shouted out in fear. It had taken so much effort from All Might's ace to damage Mewtwo this much, and now it was healing. All Might showed the same concern, as he quickly brought out another Pokémon. Come out, Golurk. Lurk. The giant ghost/ground Pokémon came out, causing the ground to shake a bit from his sheer size and power. Mewtwo growled as he formed a shadow ball and threw it at Golurk. Phantom Force. All Might called out. A shadowy portal formed underneath Golurk, and it disappeared into it, as the shadow ball flew right past it. Mewtwo looked around, wondering where on earth the massive Pokémon had disappeared to, but deciding it was better safe than sorry, Mewtwo used Protect, putting up a barrier around himself. Unfortunately for him, however, that didn't help as a shadowy portal opened up inside the barrier, and Golurk punched Mewtwo right in the face, dispelling the Protect, and sending Mewtwo flying into a tree. Now follow up with Darkest Lariat. All Might ordered. Golurk cried as it stomped towards Mewtwo, spinning around with its arms out, dark-type energy surrounding it. Mewtwo saw this and teleported into the sky before the attack could hit. Gravity must have worn off. All Might said as he saw Mewtwo use Recover while in the sky. Let's fix that. Golurk used Gravity. Lurk. A dark swirl surrounded Golurk, as everything became heavier once again, and Mewtwo fell to the ground, landing on his feet. Mewtwo teleported behind Golurk and formed a shadow ball. But before Mewtwo could land the attack, All Might gave Golurk an order. Earthquake. Golurk stomped the ground, causing it to shake and rumble, making Mewtwo lose his footing, and shooting the shadow ball away from Golurk before the ground rose up and smacked him. Now use Heavy Slam. All Might ordered. A steel-gray aura surrounded Golurk, as he fell backward, in an attempt to crush Mewtwo. But Mewtwo used Teleport and moved a few yards away to avoid the attack. And with Golurk on the ground, Mewtwo decided now was the perfect time to throw another Shadow Ball. Phantom Force. All Might shouted. Golurk didn't even get up, the shadow portal just formed under him and he sank into it, causing the Shadow Ball to only hit the dirt. Grr. It was obvious that the longer the battle went on the more set off Mewtwo became. A shadowy portal opened behind Mewtwo, and Golurk was about to attack Mewtwo, but Mewtwo suddenly glowed blue, and dashed away, at astonishing speeds. Agility. Izuku thought. Golurk's fist hit the ground, and Mewtwo with its increased speed moved behind Golurk and shot out a shadow ball right at Golurk's back. Lurk. Golurk shouted out in pain as it stumbled forward, the super effective move doing significant damage to the Pokémon. Mewtwo then followed up by using Disable, keeping Golurk from using Phantom Force again. DMN it. Without Phantom Force Golurk has no way to get around his mobility. All Might thought, as he quickly tried to figure out his next move. Mewtwo didn't give him much time though as he had already formed 2 Shadow Ball and shot them at Golurk. Darkest Lariat. All Might ordered. Golurk spun around, its fist colliding with the Shadow Ball, destroying them. Now use Gravity again. All Might ordered, figuring that the effect must have worn off by now. Dark spiraling energy surrounded Golurk as gravity was once again renewed. Mewtwo then raised its arm, and suddenly giant green energy in the shape of grass came out and smacked Golurk. Lurk. Golurk was thrown back a few feet, landing on the ground. Heavily damaged, but not yet out. That was Grass Knot. Not only is that super effective, but against a Pokémon like Golurk, it's basically ultra effective. Izuku thought to himself, as he saw the huge Pokémon struggle to get back up. He did so much damage and only landed 2 attacks. They were both super effective, but still, that's insane. But then he took a look at Mewtwo. It was heavily damaged and wounded, if it weren't for those recovers then it definitely still wouldn't be standing right now. Izuku looked down to the Eevee. Look. He's almost down, and All Might still has 5 Pokémon. Don't worry. Eevee responded, still looking worriedly at the battle. Golurk, return. All Might brought out Golurk's Pokeball, and returned the Pokémon, before looking down at it and smiling. You did wonderfully. Take a rest now. Then, the champion brought out another Pokeball. Come out, Haxorus. All Might opened the ball, and out came the axe-headed dragon-type Pokémon. First impression. All Might called out. Suddenly, Haxorus sprinted at Mewtwo, at astonishing speeds, its axe head glowing with green bug-type energy, before he smacked Mewtwo aside. Ack! Mewtwo shouted out in pain. Now, Dragon Dance! All Might said. Hax! Haxorus stomped around, as purple energy swirled around him, increasing his speed and attack power simultaneously. Mewtwo had gotten to his feet, and used Recover, healing a bit of the damage done to him. Now use Scary Face. All Might said. Russ. Haxorus's face glowed red, as an intimidating aura was unleashed at Mewtwo, causing his speed to drop a bit, but since he used agility earlier he was still faster than he was originally, but not as much. Mewtwo opened his mouth, as icy energy formed in it, before unleashing an ice beam at Haxorus. Protect, and then use Scary Face. All Might said. Haxorus put up that same rainbow barrier, which the ice beam hit, doing nothing, and once that was done and the barrier was down, Haxorus's face was once again covered in a red intimidating aura, lowering Mewtwo's speed back down to where it was originally. Mewtwo used Disable, getting rid of Haxorus's ability to use Scary Face for now. Dragon Dance. All Might ordered. Once again Haxorus performed his dance, increasing his attack and speed even more. As Haxorus was doing this, Mewtwo brought his hands together, and formed an extremely powerful ball of cold energy, before unleashing it as a massive blast of cold heading right at the dancing Haxorus. Protect. All Might called out. The second Haxorus finished its dance, it used Protect, barely managing to get it up in time, as the blizzard hit it, doing no damage. Now, use Rock Slide. All Might shouted. Russ. Haxorus roared, as suddenly rocks appeared out of mid-air, and fell down on Mewtwo. Mewtwo jumped backward, avoiding the rocks, as they fell, putting more distance between the two Pokémon. Now use Dragon Dance. All Might said. Haxorus once again did its power-up dance, as Mewtwo used Psychic to toss the boulders aside. Wow! He used Rock Slide to buy time for Haxorus to use Dragon Dance without being attacked again. Izuku thought, looking at All Might with stars in his eyes. Now use Night Slash. All Might ordered. Haxorus's axe head glowed with dark energy, as it charged at Mewtwo so fast that Izuku could barely see it move. The boosted Pokémon slashed Mewtwo's chest, causing him to go flying once again, rolling across the dirt until he came to a stop. DDMNU. Mewtwo used Recover, but immediately afterward he gasped in pain. Well, it looks like it's finally time. All Might smiled. The poison is finally outperforming your healing. Izuku had a confused look on his face after that was said. Poison. When did Hio write? Cobalion's poison jab. That attack must have poisoned him. You did a good job hiding it. But I'm no rookie. I can tell that your Recover was becoming less and less effective over time. All Might told the Pokémon, as he brought out an Ultra Ball. Now, it's time to finish this. Haxorus - no. I will not be caught. Mewtwo said telepathically, before sparing Izuku or rather, Eevee one last glare. I have no further need to challenge you. I have already proven myself superior. I have bigger issues now. And with that, Mewtwo teleported away. Where did he go? Izuku looked around frantically, afraid that Mewtwo may pop out anywhere and attack. He's gone. From the sound of it he knew he was beaten and chose to run away rather than being caught. All Might surmised, as his Haxorus walked up to him. The champion pet the dragon type, getting some happy noises from the axe-faced Pokémon. Good job Haxorus. You did well. Or. Haxorus said happily, before All Might returned them to their Pokeball, before turning to Izuku. Young man, what on earth were you thinking? If I recall correctly, I told everyone that there was a dangerous Pokémon lurking around, and told them to stay home until I handled it. Izuku looked down at Eevee. I found this EVA and they were hurt. All Might looked down at the Eevee. Eevee looked up at All Might curiously, most of the fear having left them seemingly once Mewtwo fled. I see, well then. I will accompany you to a Pokémon Center. All Might told the young boy, picking him up off the ground. And once we get that sorted out, we'll continue this conversation further. And so that's what happened. Izuku finished explaining the whole thing to All Might, as they sat in the lobby of the Pokémon Center. So, you saw an injured Pokémon and decided to run after it despite my warning, encountered a legendary Pokémon who told you to leave the Eevee or die, and chose to run away with the Eevee. All Might summarized. Izuku had his head hung low, looking away from the champion so he wouldn't see how embarrassed he was. It was dumb, I know, but two couldn't just leave Eevee to die. They wouldn't have lasted a second against that monster. I didn't either, but at least I bought some time. I know that doesn't make what I did any better, and there's no need to justify yourself, young Midoriya. All Might put his hand on Izuku's shoulder, causing the boy to jump in his seat with excitement. Had you not done what you did, I wouldn't have arrived in time to save that Eevee. And an innocent Pokémon would have perished. It's only thanks to you that they're still alive and being treated. There is no need to be ashamed of your heroism. Izuku looked like he was about to cry. He was literally shaking in his seat with joy. Is this a dream? I'm being praised. By All Might. Oh my God. Oh my God. Calm down, lad. All Might was a little weirded out at the visibly vibrating fanboy. I get being a fanboy, but by Arceus, this is too much. Excuse me, can Izuku Midoriya please come to the front desk? Called one of the nurse joys. Izuku immediately jumped out of his seat and ran over to the front desk. He certainly has a lot of energy. All Might thought. Back at the front desk, Nurse Joy placed Eevee on the desk in front of Izuku, and the Pokémon immediately jumped onto Izuku, running up his chest and onto his shoulder. Eevee rubbed their head against Izuku's cheek, as a sign of affection. Showing that they had completely warmed up to him. Eevee. Izuku grabbed Eevee and held them to his chest, hugging them tightly. I was so worried about you. I'm so glad you're okay. Voy. Eevee looked up at Izuku with a glowing smile. All Might and Nurse Joy smiled at the heartwarming scene. Izuku then held Eevee out and looked down at them with a bittersweet smile. I guess it's time to return you to the wild then, huh? Voy. Eevee looked upset at that and shook their head. Huh? You don't want to go back? Izuku looked confused. I think she wants to stay with you, Mr. Midoriya. Nurse Joy giggled a bit at the boy's unawareness. Huh? Izuku was taken aback by that. Stay with me. Like as my Pokémon. You did save their life, young Midoriya. All Might told him. I think this is their way of showing their gratitude. All Might then took out a Pokeball, and handed it to Izuku. Izuku looked at the Pokeball in awe, and then back at Eevee, who was giving him a determined look, wagging their tail very enthusiastically. My first Pokémon. Tears slowly went down Izuku's face, but his astonished expression didn't change. Eevee gave Izuku a concerned look. I am fine, Eevee. Izuku sniffled as he used the back of his hand to wipe away the tears. Are you really sure you want to be my first Pokémon? Eevee looked at the Pokeball in Izuku's other hand, before jumping out of Izuku's grasp, and slapping the button on the Pokeball. A beam of energy came out of the ball, engulfing Eevee and bringing her into it. Chun. The ball made a noise, signifying that Eevee was instantly caught. Izuku looked down at the Pokeball, in absolute shock for about a minute. Before a huge grin grew on his face and he held the Pokeball into the air. I caught my first Pokémon. Almost immediately, Izuku let Eevee out of the ball and held her in his arms, the two spinning around in joyous celebration. Well then, to add to this moment, I have a gift for you. All Might said something out of his pocket and handed it to Izuku. "Ha, a letter." Izuku took the letter from All Might, looking down at it curiously. There was an address written on it, but nothing else. "An old man is living in Bespin City. Deliver this letter to him, and you'll find your reward." All Might instructed him. "Ito, I really deserve this?" Izuku asked as he looked down at the letter. "Young man, you displayed a love and care for Pokémon rarely seen anywhere else. I can confidently say that out of anyone, you deserve it." All Might told him. Once again Izuku broke down into tears of pure happiness. It was too much. Being praised by his idol like this, getting a Pokémon, and then getting a gift from the champion. "Thank you. Thank you all so much. You're more than welcome." All Might flashed him one of his signature smiles. "Now then, it's quite late. I have to return to the Pokémon League and inform them of what happened. And you should get home. I assume your parents must be worried sick." Izuku's eyes bulged when he said that, as he realized his mother was most likely having a panic attack, not knowing where he was right now. "You're right. Sorry, All Might, I have got to get going. Let's go Eevee." VE. Eevee climbed onto Izuku's head, nestling herself in his hair as Izuku ran out of the Pokémon Center. "He certainly has a lot of energy, doesn't he?" All Might said to himself. XXXXXXXXX, oh my, that is a very interesting story. Nizu to Izuku, after he finished explaining what happened. It was the next day, and after a good night's sleep with Eevee, Izuku headed over to Nizu's lab. "Yeah, Mom freaked out about it too," Izuku said sheepishly, remembering his mother nearly fainting when he told her. "Well, it seems fate smiled upon you then. You won't have to wait for a starter after all," Nizu said, looking up at Eevee who was on Izuku's shoulder. "And a particularly colored one at that." Eevee said. "Well, then I believe it's time you got this." Nizu jumped over to a desk, opened it up with his tail, and pulled out a Pokédex, before holding it out towards Izuku. "My own Pokédex." Izuku was vibrating with excitement, as he took the device, and inspected it thoroughly. "Eevee. Jump onto the desk so I can scan you." Eevee. Eevee did as she was told, and stood proudly in front of Izuku. Izuku held up the Pokédex and pressed the power button in the center. "Eevee. The evolution Pokémon," the Pokédex said in its robotic voice. "A rare Pokémon that adapts to harsh environments by taking different evolutionary forms." Izuku looked at the screen of the Pokédex, which showed a list of information about Eevee. Whoa, it even shows the moves that Eevee knows. Let's see: Helping Hand, Quick Attack, Dig, and Swift. Those are some good starting moves. Indeed. Now, are you ready to start your Pokémon journey? Nizu asked him. Izuku nodded, as he pocketed the Pokédex, before looking at his backpack. It was heavy and full of supplies he would need for his journey, carefully packed by his mother. "Yes, sir. I've been ready all my life." Nizu smiled at him. "Then what are you waiting for?" Izuku smiled back, and Eevee jumped back onto his shoulder. "You right. Come on Eevee. Let's go." Eevee looked fired up, and ready to go. XXXXXXXXX. Izuku stood at the entrance to Route 1 and took a deep breath. "Alright, when we leave this town our journey officially begins. Are you ready Eevee?" Eevee gave him a determined look as if saying, "Absolutely." "Alright." Izuku clenched pumped his fist. "Then let's dash, Deku!" shouted a familiar, and very angry voice from behind him. Izuku looked behind him, and saw a very angry Bakugo, running right at him. Oh. Izuku had a feeling that this would go badly. Bakugo charged at Izuku, only stopping when he was right up in his face. "What the hell Deku? You told me you didn't get a Pokémon yesterday. So what's that?" Bakugo pointed to Eevee on Izuku's shoulder, who in response growled at the angry blonde. Izuku sweats nervously as he wonders what to say. He'll never believe me if I tell him what happened yesterday. I found her injured and took her to the Pokémon Center. And she was so grateful that she decided to become my Pokémon. Izuku said, cutting out a lot of the more unbelievable parts of his story. Bakugo gave him a look, before backing off, tentatively believing him. TCH, whatever. At least no, I can start my journey off right. By crushing you. Get that stupid miscolor ready. Because we're having a battle. Now. Oh okay. Izuku was a bit taken off guard, before he processed the request properly, and gave Bakugo a determined look. Alright Eevee. Are you ready? VE. Eevee jumped off of Izuku's shoulder, and stood on the ground, ready to fight. Izuku and Bakugo backed up a good distance before Bakugo released his Pokémon. Get your butt out here Charmander. Bakugo pulled out his Pokémon, who also stood ready to fight. Charmander shouted, as it glared at Eevee, who glared right back. Now, Charmander use Ember. Bakugo ordered. Charmander. Charmander spat out a small fireball at Eevee. Dodge it, and use quick attack. Izuku ordered. V. Eevee jumped to the side before their body was surrounded by a white aura, and they sprinted at Charmander with great speed, and tackled him, causing him to stagger a bit. Scratch. Bakugo ordered. Charmander's claws glowed white, as it retaliated against Eevee's attack, by scratching it. V. Eevee cried out in pain, as it was knocked back by the force of Charmander's attack. Eevee. Izuku called out, concerned for his Pokémon, before gritting his teeth, remembering that he couldn't waste any time in a Pokémon battle. Eevee, use Dig. Eevee. Eevee's paws glowed brown, as it dug into the ground rapidly, before disappearing under it. SHT, a super effective move. Bakugo cursed. You better not get hit by hit. Charmander didn't know what to do, looking around the ground to see where Eevee would pop up. Suddenly the ground under Charmander burst open, and Eevee popped out, hitting Charmander right in the jaw. Charmander was flung back a few feet by the force of the super effective hit, DMN it. Use Ember. Bakugo ordered. Charmander forced himself up, with great difficulty, and shot an ember out of his mouth. Dodge and use quick attack. Izuku ordered again. Eevee repeated her actions, dodging to the side, and then using quick attack, charging into Charmander and knocking over with a tackle. Charmander was on its last legs, the starter was not gonna be able to take much more of this, DMN it, use scratch again. Bakugo ordered. Eevee use quick attack to dodge. Izuku ordered. Eevee was surrounded by white energy, and as Charmander's claw was about to come down on her, and she sped backward, causing the attack to miss. Now use Swift. Izuku said. Stars formed around Eevee before they shot out at Charmander. Get out of the way. Bakugo barked. Charmander jumped to the side, but the stars turned and hit him anyway. Boom. There was a small explosion, making a dust cloud that covered Charmander completely. When the dust settled, the Charmander was on the ground with swirls in its eyes. Knocked out. 2-1. Izuku once again was overwhelmed by joy, jumping into the air as he smiled victoriously. I won. TCH, don't get so happy Deku. You only won because I haven't had the chance to train this crappy mon. Bakugo shouted out as he returned Charmander to his Pokeball. Next time we fight, I'll kick your butt. V. Eevee jumped onto Izuku's shoulder and gave Bakugo a smug look. We'll see about that Kakin. Izuku felt a rush of confidence after winning his first battle, and he gave a bright, energetic smile at his rival. This seemed to PSS Bakugo off, as he spat in Izuku's direction, digging into his pocket before throwing 1,000 Pokebucks on the ground, and stomping off to the Pokémon Center. Hey, Eevee. Do you want to head to the Pokémon Center before we go? Izuku asked his starter, as he picked up the money from his victory. Voy. Eevee shook her head and looked eagerly towards route. Well, if you're sure. Izuku turned towards the route. Then let's go. And so, Izuku marched on to route, starting his Pokémon adventure. XXXXXXXXXX night had fallen, and Izuku had set up camp in the forest route. Man, today was really exciting. Izuku smiled, as he laid down in his tent, with Eevee by his side. Eevee said happily, seemingly agreeing with Izuku's statement. Izuku and Eevee didn't just march on to Bespin City, rather they had taken the time to properly explore the route, as well as taking down a few wild Pokémon. Nothing special, just some weak bug types and a few weak normal types. Izuku didn't have any Pokeball yet, but he had about 10,000 Pokebucks from his mom and that 1,000 Bakugo gave him, so he could definitely buy a few when he reached the next town. Well, I think it's time we both rested. Izuku yawned, closing his eyes. Good night, Eevee. Eevee also closed their eyes, and soon fell into a deep sleep. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Ha. Suddenly, both Izuku and Eevee were woken up by a piercing scream. What was that? Is someone in trouble? Eevee looked concerned, as she and Izuku crawled out of the tent. Someone help! Shouted a feminine voice somewhere nearby. Okay, someone definitely is in trouble. Let's go, Eevee. Izuku said. Eevee had a determined look, as she jumped onto Izuku's shoulder, and they ran off towards the sound. After a bit of running through the dense forest, they eventually found a clearing where a young girl with short brown hair, and Togepi that was presumably hers were backed up against the edge of a river, cornered by Tangrowth. Izuku saw the Tangrowth corner the girl and knew he had to act. Eevee, use Swift. Izuku ordered. Eevee. Eevee shouted as she shot out a swarm of stars at the wild Pokémon. Tang! Tangrowth turned to the side, being alerted to Izuku's presence by the noise, and got hit in the face by Swift, not doing much damage but causing it to close its eyes and flinch. Come on. Izuku motioned for the girl to run with him, and she did so, taking her Togepi and running to Izuku. Thank you. The girl gave Izuku a tearful look of gratitude, getting a bit too close and making Izuku blush a bit. It's fine. For now, let's run. Izuku told her. Right. She said. The two ran into the thick forest, and it was then Izuku noticed that Togepi was heavily damaged. Oh my god. We need to get them to a Pokémon Center immediately. Do you know where we can find one? The girl asks, clearly panicking. Yeah, the closest one is in Bespin City. Just follow me. Izuku told her, as he took the lead. XXXXXXXXXXX, your Togepi is being cared for. She should be healed by tomorrow. Nurse Joy said to the brown-haired girl. Thank you. The girl said to the nurse before she turned and went over to Izuku who was waiting nearby. Hey, is Togepi gonna be okay? Izuku's face turned beet red, as the girl suddenly hugged him out of nowhere. Thank you. The girl exclaimed. Thank you so much for saving us. Ha. It's nothing. Izuku was red as a crabby and he could barely get his words out. Eevee snickered at how flustered her trainer was, clearly enjoying this greatly. Eventually, the girl separated from him and introduced herself. My name is Achiko Uraraka. Nice to meet ya. I am Izuku Midoriya. Same. Izuku stuttered, still recovering from the earlier hug. And this is Eevee. Eevee eagerly greeted Achiko. They are so cute. Achiko immediately started petting Eevee, who leaned into Achiko's hand and enjoyed the attention thoroughly. But I thought Eevee were more brown. Is she shiny? Izuku shook his head. No, shiny Eevee are gray. I think this one is a special variant. Which are even rarer. Wow, that's so cool. Ochiko's face brightened up as if she wasn't in mortal danger not too long ago. Why, but how did you get attacked by a Tangrowth? Izuku asked her. Ochiko turned sheepish as she explained what happened. So I was looking for a place to set up camp when I found that river, but then the Tangrowth attacked me. I tried to fight it with Togepi, but it was way too strong, and well, Togepi's attacks aren't great. I see, that's why they were so injured, Izuku said. Well, at least you're both safe now. Suddenly Izuku yawned, and he became aware of how tired he still was. You're tired? Ochiko asked, looking a bit guilty. Did I wake you up while you were sleeping? Why, but it's fine, Izuku said, before realizing something. Ah, but I am going to have to go back and get all my stuff. I kind of left them on Route 1 because I had to run straight here. I'm sorry. Ochiko gave him an apologetic bow, with an embarrassed look on her face. But you should probably wait until tomorrow morning. After all, if you're too tired you might not be able to think straight if we run into another strong Pokémon. Yeah, I guess we. Izuku noticed. Aha. I'm going with you. It's my fault you had to leave your stuff behind, so I should help you get it back. Ochiko explained, before turning a bit sheepish. And I didn't really have any money to pay you back yet, so this is kind of all I can do for now. You really don't need to pay me back. Izuku insisted. Ochiko shook her head. I refuse to be a charity case. If someone does me a favor then I have to return it. I see. Izuku looked at the girl, who seemed to have her heart set on doing this. Then I guess we really should get some sleep. You must be really tired. Hee, a little. Ochiko giggled tiredly. Well then let's get a room at the Pokémon Center, and we'll go to Route 1 tomorrow. Agreed. Izuku nodded. XXXXXXXXX. It was bright and early, and Izuku and Ochiko were walking down Route 1, looking for Izuku's stuff. Eevee and Togepi were walking behind them, seemingly having some kind of conversation. You really didn't need to buy me Pokeballs, Ochiko told him, seemingly embarrassed. I already owe you enough, you know. Well, I think every Pokémon trainer should have Pokeballs. What if you run into a Pokémon you really want to catch but have no Pokeballs, and never run into them again? Izuku explained flusteredly. Oh, and speaking of Pokémon you want to catch, are you a type specialist? Aha. I've always loved flying types. I can't wait for little Togepi to evolve and take to the sky. Ochiko said, launching her fist into the air. What about you? Oh, me. I'm a generalist. I'll use whatever types of Pokémon I come across. Izuku said. Just like the champion. Ochiko pointed out, causing Izuku to blush. Why, yeah, I actually met the champion once. Izuku revealed. Whoa, really? Ochiko looked at him wide-eyed. Like, in person? Yeah. He saved me and Eevee from a rampaging Pokémon. A strong one too. Izuku decided to abstain from telling her that it was a legendary Pokémon and an unknown one at that, not thinking she would believe him. And I got to see him battle in front of my eyes. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. That's amazing, Midoriya. Ochiko smiled at him. I wish I got to see something like that. Seeing the champion fight would probably be a great way to learn and become a better trainer. Yeah, he definitely used some amazing tactics. Izuku smiled, recalling the fight between All Might and Mewtwo. 2M hoping someday, I can get strong enough to surpass him, and become the champion myself. Ochiko gave him a thoughtful look, before seemingly inspecting him, causing Izuku to once again blush in embarrassment. I know it sounds pretty generic and kind of absurd, it's just a dream of mine, Izuku said with his head down low. No, it's fine. That's a great goal. Ochako said, picking his mood back up again. My goal is to become a gym leader, so I can support my family, and protect my town. That sounds amazing. Becoming a gym leader is kind of like becoming mayor of a town or city. It's a seriously impressive feat, Izuku pointed out. Yup. So I'm gonna have to train long and hard to get that strong. Isn't that right, Togepi? Ochako turned and asked her Pokémon. Pi. Togepi jumped up, eagerly agreeing with her trainer. The two reached a clearing in the woods, and saw Izuku's stuff, sitting there waiting to be collected. Phew, it's still here. Ochako gave a sigh of relief. I really couldn't have afforded having to replace all that. I wouldn't have forced you to. Izuku pointed out, not that Ochako appeared to be listening. Anyway, let me help you get all this packed up. Ochako said, not so much offering her help, but rather forcing it. Okay, thank you for the help, Izuku said weakly, as the two started to put things away. XXXXXXXXX, alright, that should be everything, Izuku said, putting the last item into his bag. Well then we should dash. Ochako was cut off by another panicked cry. Cheese. Ha. Izuku and Ochako looked down the path and saw a chase bin running towards them, getting chased by a Pidove, who kept trying to nuzzle against them and was making very affectionate sounds. Is that chase bin getting attacked? Ochako asked, tilting her head in confusion. No, it looks like the Pidove is flirting very aggressively. Izuku surmised. Eevee, let's help the chase bin out. Eevee jumped in front of Izuku, ready to fight. Alright, let's start with quick attack. Izuku ordered. Eevee surrounded herself with white glowing energy, before barreling at Pidove at max speed. Pi. Pidove. Pidove barely had any time to react to Eevee's advance, and by the time they looked up at Eevee, they were already getting hit. Eevee tackled the Pidove, knocking it a few feet away from the chase bin. Chase bin turned around and saw Eevee standing in front of it, having kept the Pidove away. The chase bin then jumped up in the air, smiling in celebration. Chase bin. Looks like they're happy. Ochako pointed out. Meanwhile, the Pidove shook their head and looked at Eevee, their body glowing red for a moment. What was that? Ochako asked. If I had to guess, that must have been rivalry. It's an ability Pidove has that increases their attack power when they fight a Pokémon of the same gender. Izuku explained. So Pidove is a girl then? Ochako surmised. Pyodove. Pidove unleashed a powerful blast of wind at Eevee, causing them to get blown back a bit and take some damage. That was Gust. Izuku explained. Eevee, use Swift. Eve. Stars formed around Eevee, before shooting out at the flying Pidove. Pi. Pidove tried to fly away and dodge, but the stars tracked her, and hit her causing an explosion. Dove. Pidove fell out of the sky and onto the ground, very injured and close to fainting. Now use Swift one more time. Izuku ordered. Eevee unleashed another Swift at Pidove, who couldn't even try to dodge. Boom. The stars hit, causing a small explosion and making a dust cloud. And when the dust settled, the Pidove was lying on the ground unconscious. Alright. Izuku cheered at winning yet another battle. Izuku raised his hand in the air, and Eevee ran and jumped up to give him a high five with her paw. Cheese. Chase Bin was also celebrating, most likely because the Pidove that had harassed him was now defeated. Great job Midoriya. Ochako said. So, are you gonna catch her? Oh well. Izuku looked at Pidove, and then at Ochako, recalling what she said earlier. I was thinking you should catch it. Me? Ochako asked, looking very surprised. Well yeah. You wanted to be a flying type trainer right? Izuku pointed out. So why don't you catch it? I was thinking of catching this chase spin anyway. Fine. Ochako really didn't like all the help she was being given for free, and normally she would refuse, but Togepi was pretty weak right now, so she actually could really use this type of opportunity. Ochako took out a Pokeball and threw it at the Pidove. The Pokeball hit Pidove, capturing it before the ball fell to the floor and started wiggling. WRR, 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 ching. Alright. Ochako ran over to the Pokeball, and picked it up, holding her now captured Pidove. Thanks so much. Izuku gave her a thumbs up, before turning to the chase spin. Alright, now to catch the dash, cheese. Before Izuku could say anything else, the chase spin ran up to Izuku and slapped one of the Pokeballs on Izuku's belt. Capturing itself. Ching. The Pokeball made the noise, instantly, signifying that chase spin had been willingly caught. Ha! I guess saving Pokemon really endears you to them. Izuku said, remembering that the same thing happened with Eevee. I guess. Ochako giggled. It works with people too. Hee hee. Guess I've been doing a lot of saving lately. Izuku said sheepishly. Nothing to be ashamed of. Ochako told him. In fact, I have a little request. You're going to battle all the gyms so you can do the league challenge, right? Right. Izuku nodded. Well, I want to do the same thing. In order to become a gym leader, you have to prove your strength at the league tournament. So don't we go together? Ha! Like traveling companions. Izuku didn't think he'd ever have traveling companion. She wasn't exactly popular back at home. Hey, are you sure? I was being serious when I said you don't owe me anything. Midoriya, you saved me and my Pokemon, bought my Pokeballs, and then got me another Pokemon. Like I said, I can't just take something and not return the favor. Ochako pointed out. So, since I owe you so much, I might as well travel with you and do what I can to help you out. Plus it helps me too. I get someone to talk to, and we get to keep each other safe. It's a win for everyone. I guess. Izuku was still adjusting to the thought that anyone would want to travel with him. Why yeah. That sounds great. Alright. Ochako cheered. Hey, let's go to the Pokemon Center, and get our Pokemon healed. And check out our new friends. Good idea. Izuku agreed. Let's go. XXXXXXXXX, your Pokemon are as good as new. Nurse Joy told Izuku and Ochako, holding out 2 trays with Izuku and Ochiko's Pokemon on them. Thanks. Ochako and Izuku said at the same time as they took their respective Pokeballs. The two of them moved from the front desk to the lobby and took out their partner Pokemon, as well as their new Pokemon. Cheese. Chase Spin popped out of the Pokeball, happy and smiling. Pie. Pidove popped out of the Pokeball, and immediately went over to Chase Spin to start harassing him, much to his dismay, as Chase Spin tried to keep her at a distance with vines that came out of his shoulders. Eevee suddenly jumped in between Chase Spin and Pidove, annoyed that Pidove clearly wasn't taking the hint, causing the two Pokemon to glare at each other. Hey, behave. Ochako ordered her new Pokemon. Pie. Pidove turned away from the two Pokemon, pouting about as well as a bird could. Alright, let's check them out. Izuku took out his Pokédex and Ochako did the same. Chase Spin. The spiny nut Pokemon. Izuku's Pokédex said as he scanned Chase Spin. The quills on its head are usually soft. When it flexes, the points become so hard and sharp they can pierce rock. Pidove. The tiny pigeon Pokemon, Ochiko's Pokédex said. It's forgetful and not very bright. But many people love it for its friendliness and sincerity. Friendliness and sincerity. Ochako almost laughed as she looked at her own Pidove. I don't see it. The two looked over their Pokédexes. Alright. It looks like Chase Spin knows Vine WHP, Leech Seed, Bite, and Mud Shot. Izuku said. And Pidove knows gust, quick attack, taunt, and swagger, Ochako said. Cool. Alright, we should probably get going, Izuku said, as Eevee jumped on his head, and Chasepin climbed up onto his shoulder. Ochako picked up Togepi and returned Pidove back to her ball. So, should we challenge the gym? You and I actually have someplace to go first. Izuku took out the letter All Might gave him. I have to deliver this to the person living at the address on this letter. But you can go ahead to the gym if you want. Nah, it shouldn't take that long, right? So I might as well go with you. Ochako said. Alright. Then let's go. Izuku said. XXXXXXX Bespin City was a pretty mid-sized city all things considered. With various people and Pokémon going around enjoying themselves. Although there was nothing that seemed truly special about it. It took a bit of asking around, but eventually, they found the house. Alright, this should be the place, Izuku said, as he nervously approached the front door. Izuku tentatively knocked on the door and waited for someone to respond. But no one ever did. Instead the door just opened. Izuku wasn't sure what he should do next, so he just opened the door completely. Excuse my Arceus. Inside the house was a tiny old man, lying face down on the floor with red stuff spilling everywhere. What's going on my Arceus, he's dead. Ochako screamed as she saw the old man. I'm alive. The old man said. He suddenly raised his head. He's alive. Izuku and Ochako said simultaneously. XXXXXXXXX, that was mean, Mr. Torino. Ochako complained. The two were now sitting down on the old man's couch, while the old man sat down in the chair opposite to them. You youngins don't know how to take a joke. The old man, or rather Sorahiko Torino, Grand Torino, said. Now what do you two want with me? Oh, he was told to give you this. Izuku took the letter out of his pocket and gave it to Torino. Torino took the letter, and opened it, reading it quietly for a few minutes, before speaking. I see. He then ripped the letter in two. Yeah, no. I'm not giving it to you. Izuku and Ochako both shouted out in shock. At least not yet, Torino added, calming the two down a bit. Just because you proved yourself to the champion, doesn't mean you proved yourself to me. Wait, that letter was from All Might. Ochako shouted. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't think you'd believe me. Izuku defended himself. Hey. I was speaking. Torino said, getting their attention once more. As I was saying, I want to know if you are ready for this gift. So I have a task for you. I'll do it. Izuku said. All Might had said he was the right choice for this gift, and if that meant he had to work for it, then that's what he would do. After all, how could he disappoint All Might? Well, aren't you eager? Well then go to the top of, and get me a Salic berry. Torino told them. You can take the girl with you for all I care. You might need the help. Has some Pokémon that might be a bit much to handle for beginners. It's gonna be dangerous. Are you sure you're still up to it? Both Izuku and Okako looked at each other, and nodded, their Pokémon looking fired up for the challenge. Well then get going. Torino shooed them. The sooner we get this over with, the sooner I can take a nap. Right. They both said, as they grabbed their things, and headed off to XXXXXXXXX. The two made it to the base of the mountain, which had a trail leading up it. So, this is, Izuku said, before looking at Ochako. Are you sure you want to come with me? Of course. We're traveling companions after all. I have to make sure you're okay. Ochako nodded. And I want to see what kind of present you get from the champion. That's fair. I'm really excited about it too. Izuku said, taking a deep breath. Alright, let's go. XXXXXXXX. The two of them walked up the mountain path for a while, until eventually they reached a cliffside, and decided to take a break. Man, this is a big mountain, Izuku noted, taking a moment to catch his breath. Yeah, but we still haven't seen any big dangerous Pokémon. Ochako pointed out. Maybe he was just trying to scare us. Raw. Suddenly, from the side of the cliff, an Ursaring climbed up onto their level and stood up, growling menacingly at them. Why did I open my mouth? Ochako lamented. That Ursaring looks strong, I don't think we can beat it. Izuku analyzed, thinking of ways to get out of this. They could run, but Ursaring was fast enough that it may catch them. He looked at the cliffside the bear Pokémon was standing next to and got an idea. Uraraka. Please send out Pidove. Oh ho, okay. Come out Pidove. Ochako said, sending out the bird Pokémon. Pi. Pidove called out. Now I need you to tell Pidove to use swagger. Izuku asked her. Alright, Pidove, use swagger. Ochako ordered. Pidove raised her beak arrogantly into the sky and glowed red. You are. Ursaring looked confused and suddenly got tipsy, as the confusion status settled in. Now Eevee, run under him, by the cliff. Izuku ordered. Eve. Eevee ran past Ursaring, under its feet, and behind the much larger Pokémon. Ring. Ursaring, staggered as it turned, and raised its claw, as it glowed with white energy, but in its confused state, it was too slow to bring it down. Dodge using quick attack. Izuku ordered. V. Eevee was quickly surrounded in white energy, as she bolted between the Bearmon's legs again, causing Ursaring to overswing, and very nearly fall off the cliff. Just a little more. Eevee, use swift. Izuku commanded. Help out Pidove. Use gust. Ochako added. Eevee. Eevee shot out a group of stars at Ursaring. Pidove. Pidove flapped its wings and sent a blast of strong wind at the larger Pokémon. Ring. Ursaring yelled out, as both attacks hit it at once, sending it flying off the cliffside. Phew. Both trainers took a sigh of relief, before turning to each other. We did it. Ochako raised her hand for a high five, and Izuku tentatively did high five her. Yeah. Izuku cheered. Let's take a few more seconds to rest, and then let's move on. XXXXXXXX. The two continued climbing up the mountain, before deciding to take another break. I'm tired. But I don't want to get ambushed again. Ochako sighed, before looking around, spotting a nearby cave. Hey, maybe if we rest in there, we won't get attacked. And with that, Ochako went off running towards the cave. Hey, wait. Izuku ran after her. The two went decently deep into the cave until Ochako sat down. Now we'll be fine. Ochako exclaimed. I wouldn't be sure. Lots of Pokémon made their homes in caves. Izuku said nervously. And if a Pokémon comes in from the outside will be Grav. Both trainers froze, as they looked at the entrance of the cave, and saw a Graveler blocking the only exit, looking very unhappy. Oh come on. Ochako shouted. It still looks strong, but it is 4 times weak to grass. Izuku looked at Chasepin. Come on Chasepin. Cheese. Chasepin jumped out in front and was ready to fight. Use mud shot. Izuku ordered. Cheese. Chasepin opened its mouth, and bullets made of mud shot out and hit Graveler in the face. Lure. Graveler grunted as the attack hit it, doing a small bit of damage, and lowering its speed. Grav. Graveler raised its arm, and slammed it into the ground, causing the ground to shake. Cheese. Chasepin was smacked by the earth rising, causing the grass type to go flying into the ceiling before hitting the floor again. That was magnitude. Izuku shouted out. And magnitude 7 from the looks of it. Togepi, use life dew on Chasepin. Ochako said, letting Togepi out of her arms. Pie. Togepi formed a bit of glowing water in her hands and threw it at Chespin. The water hit Chespin's head, and a blue glow covered Chespin as some of his wounds were healed. Cheese. Chespin jumped back up and was ready to fight. Thanks you too. Chespin used mud shot again. Izuku shouted. Chespin. Chespin shot another mud shot at Graveler, landing, doing some small damage, and lowering its speed again. Grav. Graveler grunted in annoyance, as it raised its arm to use magnitude again. Not this time. Chespin used Vine WHP and stopped them. Izuku called. Pin. Vines came out of Chespin's shoulders, and shot out at Graveler, smacking its arm and interrupting its attack, as well as smacking its face and doing some damage, because it was 4 times effective. Now use Leech Seed. Izuku followed up. Cheese. Chespin shot out a group of glowing seeds from its mouth at Graveler. The seeds landed on Graveler, sprouting into little plants that embedded themselves on the rock/ground type. Graveler flinched a bit, as its life force was sapped away by the seeds, flowing away as green energy that went into Chespin. Now, non-stop Vine WHP. Izuku ordered. Chespin. Chespin shouted as it unleashed a barrage of Vine WHP attacks on Graveler. Grav. Graveler was assaulted by 4 times effective attacks, and its life force was drained by Leech Seed. And it was so slow it couldn't get out an attack before Chespin got out 6. In the end, Graveler knew it was beaten, and so it decided to flee. It curled up into a ball, and rolled backward, off the side of the mountain, all the way back down. Alright. Good job Chespin. Izuku said, petting the grass type's head. Cheese. Chespin smiled brightly, as Eevee came down to high-five him. And thanks for the life to you too, Izuku said, turning to Ochako and Togepi. It was nothing, that was amazing though. Ochako praised. That thing must have been 10 times stronger and you two both made it run away. Both Izuku and Chespin rubbed the back of their heads sheepishly as they received the praise. Well, we're lucky it was ground and rock type. If Vine WHP wasn't 4 times effective and Mud Shot wasn't super effective we wouldn't have been able to do significant damage. Right, so we should probably get out of this cave before another Pokémon comes, Ochako said. Yeah. Izuku agreed, as the two ran out of the cave, and started heading back up the mountain trail. By the way, I never asked before, but what are Togepi's moves? Oh, Togepi knows Metronome, Ancient Power, Life Dew, Baton Pass, and Last Resort, Ochako explained, blushing a bit with embarrassment. I know, not the greatest moveset. No, it's fine. Izuku insisted. They might struggle a bit in single battles, but in double battles, that's actually a really good moveset. And for single battles, you could always use Pidove. Yeah. Thanks again for that by the way. Ochako repeated her previous thanks. I told you it's fine, Izuku repeated himself. Also what's Togepi's ability? Serene Grace, Ochako answered. Serene Grace and Ancient Power interesting. Izuku thought out loud. XXXXXXXXX Ochako and Izuku were now even further up the mountain and still walking. Ugh, why did this mountain have to be so tall? Ochako complained. This reward better be some legendary Pokémon or something in some mochi. I doubt All Might would just give some kid he just met a legendary Pokémon, Izuku said. And I'll buy you some mochi after we're done, as thanks for helping me. Immediately Ochako perked up and got a determined look in her eyes. Alright, let's get that berry. Izuku laughed a bit at seeing how easy it was to get her fired up when he saw it. The top of the mountain. We're here. Izuku said, as both he and Ochako immediately ran up the path to the mountain's peak. At the peak was flat land, where a meadow and a small spring. As well as a plethora of berry trees. And a huge Pangoro, sitting standing guard, and staring them down. You have to be kidding me. Ochako slouched over, completely done with this mountain. I see the berry. Izuku spotted the berry in a tree right behind the Pangoro. I hate this stupid mountain. Ochako picked herself back up, with fire in her eyes. Alright. How are we gonna take this thing down? Izuku stared at the Pangoro, who stared back at them. Not moving, as if daring them to attack first. Alright, our only chance of beating it in a straight fight is by getting a bunch of ancient power boosts, and then baton passing to Pidove, Izuku explained his plan to her. But even with serene grace, that's only a 20% chance per attack. Ochako reminded him. It's our only option, I'll use Chase Spin and try to stall them for as long as I can, while you get the boost, Izuku said. I guess that'll have to do. Ochako nodded. Alright, let's do it. Chase Spin, Togepi, get ready. Izuku said to the two Pokémon. Chase Spin and Togepi hopped off their respective trainers and ran over to the Pangoro. Pangoro got out of their sitting position, and stood up, towering over the two much smaller Pokémon. Alright, Chase Spin use Leech Seed. Izuku ordered. Togepi use Ancient Power. Ochako followed up. Chase Spin spat out a bunch of seeds onto Pangoro, which started to slowly sap away at Pangoro's health. Meanwhile, Togepi summoned floating rocks, surrounded by purple energy, and threw them at Pangoro. Go! Pangoro was hit by the attack, but it did basically nothing to it, but Togepi was surrounded by blue energy, signifying that its power was increased. Alright, first try. Ochako cheered. Don't celebrate too soon. If we're gonna make up for the power difference we'll need to do that 3 more times. Izuku analyzed. 3 more times. Ochako shouted in shock. Meanwhile, Pangoro's arm glowed with dark brown energy, and it was about to slam it down on Togepi. Chase Spin use Vine WHP and get Togepi out of there. Izuku shouted. Cheese. Vines came out of Chespin's shoulder, and grabbed Togepi, getting them out of the way just in time, as Pangoro's attack slammed into the ground, making a mighty thud and breaking up the ground around it, and creating a mighty dust cloud. That would have taken out Togepi in 1 hit. Ochako said fearfully. That was Hammer Arm. Izuku said, it's powerful, but on the bright side it also makes them slower. Speaking of, Chase Spin used Mud Shot. Cheese. Chase Spin shot out a mud shot at Pangoro, who took it taking no damage but lowering its speed. Togepi Ancient Power. Ochako called out. Togepi once again unleashed Ancient Power on Pangoro, who took no damage once again, but this time Togepi didn't get the boost. Oh come on. Ochako complained. Pangoro got up and formed a focus blast in their hand. Dodge it. Both Ochako and Izuku shouted. Both Pokémon jumped to opposite sides, as the blast came barreling at them, missing them completely. Mud Shot. Izuku shouted. Chase Spin. Chase Spin shot out another mud shot at Pangoro, lowering its speed once more. Again. Izuku ordered. Cheese. Chase Spin shot yet another mud shot, lowering Pangoro's speed one last time. Rapid Fire, Ancient Power. Ochako said, knowing that Pangoro was now much slower so it would take longer for it to retaliate. Togepi Thai. Togepi unleashed wave after wave of Ancient Power onto Pangoro. First wave. No boost. Second wave, no boost, third wave. Boost. Fourth wave, no boost. Fifth wave, boost. Pangoro, annoyed at getting pelted by rocks, formed a purple goopy ball in their hand and threw it at Togepi. That's Gunk Shot. Chase Spin get her out of there with Vine WHP. Izuku ordered. Chespin's vines came out and wrapped around Togepi, moving them out of the way. Just in the nick of time. We only need 1 more boost, and we've reduced its speed as much as we could. Izuku analyzed. Chase Spin, we need to distract Pangoro for as long as possible. Get closer, and start using Vine WHP on their face. Cheese. Chayspin set Togepi down, and ran in, closing the gap between him and the massive Pokémon, before slapping it right in the face with its vines. Pan. Pangoro got annoyed at this and used Hammer Arm again, but it was so slow now that Chayspin was able to jump out of the way just before it hit him, and slapped them again. Alright Togepi. One more time. Use Ancient Power until you get the power boost. Ochako ordered. Pi. Togepi shouted, unleashing multiple waves of rocks at Pangoro. First wave. No boost. Second wave. No boost. Third wave. No boost. Fourth wave. No boost. Fifth wave. No boost. Sixth wave. No boost. Oh come on. Ochako shouted out in frustration. Togepi was starting to get tired from spamming ancient powers, and Chayspin was getting tired from dodging. And the Pangoro had only taken a bit of damage from Leech Seed, but other than that they were fine. Togepi. Togepi unleashed another ancient power at Pangoro, and when it hit, Togepi was enveloped in a blue aura, signifying they had gotten the last boost they needed. Alright, we did it. Okako cheered. Cheese. Chayspin looked at Togepi and gave a celebratory fist bump, but this moment left it open, and it was immediately hammer-armed into the dirt. Chayspin. Izuku shouted out in panic. Pangoro raised their arm, and under it was a knocked-out Chayspin. In one hit. Ochako gasped. I'm not surprised, like we thought it's way stronger than us. Izuku said, as he took out Chayspin's Pokeball and returned him into it. You did great buddy, take a rest. Eevee, your turn. Eevee eagerly jumped onto the battlefield, staring maliciously at the Pangoro. Ready to avenge their fallen ally. Togepi used Baton Pass. Ochako ordered. Pi. Togepi was covered in blue energy, as she returned to her Pokeball, and Pidove automatically came out. Dove. Pidove came out, and was surrounded by a blue aura as all the status buffs Togepi had was now bestowed onto Pidove. Pidove. Then, Pidove glowed red, as Rivalry activated. And Rivalry activated. Now the real battle begins. Izuku smiled, as he knew that they were getting close to winning. Eevee, support Pidove with helping hand. Eevee ran over to Pidove and Pidove flew down to Eevee. Eevee's paw glowed bright white, and it hit Pidove's wing, causing Pidove to be surrounded by a white aura. Now Pidove use Gust. Ochako ordered. Pidove flew up into the sky, its wings glowed white as she flapped them. But instead of releasing a strong burst of wind, it unleashed a barrage of saw blades made of wind. Go! Pangoro stumbled backward as the blades hit her, actually taking a decent amount of damage. That was Air Cutter. Izuku explained. Sweet. Ochako had a huge grin on her face, as things were really looking up. Alright, let's finish this up. Izuku said with enthusiasm. Eevee used Helping Hand again. Once again, Pidove came down to give Eevee a high five with her wing, once again having their body glow white with Helping Hand's power. Goro. Pangoro used Gunk Shot again, but Pidove easily dodged it since its speed was many times greater than before. Air Cutter. Ochako shouted. Pyodove. Pidove unleashed another barrage of razor-sharp air saws, at Pangoro, as the Pokémon once again ate a heavily boosted super-effective attack. Go. Pangoro stumbled back, now thoroughly injured from both Pidove's attacks, and Chayspin's still lingering Leech Seed. One last time. Eevee use Helping Hand. Izuku shouted. Pidove dove down at Eevee, and Eevee used Helping Hand on Pidove once more, temporarily increasing their power. Now, Pidove. Air Cutter. Ochako shouted. Pi. Dove. Pidove put all of its power into this attack, unleashing a powerful air cutter down onto Pangoro. Boom! The attack landed, creating a big explosion, and creating a huge dust cloud. When the dust cloud dispersed, Pangoro was on the ground, knocked out. Alright. Izuku and Ochako shouted at the same time, high-fiving far less awkwardly than last time, as they celebrated another victory. Okay, let's get that berry and get off this mountain. Ochako shouted, happy to get the heck out of here. Right, but first. Izuku took out a pokeball and looked down at the knocked-out Pangoro. I wanna catch her. Suddenly, as Izuku was ready to throw the ball, two Panchams came out of some nearby bushes, and went in front of the Pangoro, spreading their arms out defensively. Pancham so. Those must be her children. Izuku realized sadly. He looked at the pokeball, sighed, and put it back on his belt. Well, I can't catch her now. Ah, that's too bad. Welp. Let's get that berry and get out before any more Pokemon come. Ochako said. XXXXXXX, aha. This is a Salic berry alright. Torino said as he inspected the berry. After getting off the mountain, and taking a trip to the Pokemon Center, the two went back to Torino's house and were now sitting on his couch, waiting for Torino to show them Izuku's reward. Yeah, and it was really, really hard to get. Ochako said, kind of annoyed that she had to go through all that. Yeah, all those Pokemon there were really strong. If it weren't for Uraraka I wouldn't have stood a chance. Izuku admitted. I'm surprised you made it even with her help. Torino sighed. But a deal is a deal, come with me. XXXXXXX. The two followed the old man into what looked like some kind of Pokemon enclosure. Filled with running water like a small river, a few trees, and tree stumps as well. But there was only a single Pokemon there. Sitting on a tree stump was a mostly gray bear-like Pokemon. Whoa! I've never seen that Pokemon before. Izuku said, looking at the Pokemon in awe. Cub. The Pokemon was now alerted to their presence, and stood up, and looked at them, looking ready to fight. That's because it's a very rare, legendary Pokemon, named Kubfu, Torino explained. What? Izuku and Ochako exclaimed at the same time. Go on, check your Pokédex. Torino insisted. Izuku then very hurriedly took out his Pokédex and scanned Kubfu. Kubfu. The Wushu Pokemon. The Pokédex said. Note, this Pokemon is listed as a legendary Pokemon. Whoa. The reward actually was a legendary Pokemon. Ochako exclaimed in excitement. So all that hard work was actually worth it. Don't get too excited. For one, its power isn't fully unlocked. Not until it evolves. Torino explained. Until then its power wasn't exactly legendary. And besides, you don't have it yet, Sonny. After all, you still need to catch it. Izuku looked at the Kubfu, at a complete loss of words for a minute, before giving it a look of pure determination. Alright. Let's go. Kubfu and Chasepin glared at each other, ready to fight in the Pokemon enclosure. Since Eevee was a normal type, Izuku thought that Chasepin would be better for this battle. Alright. Let the battle begin. Torino shouted. Cub. Kubfu charged up a powerful attack with its fist, ping it back ready to unleash it on Chasepin. Foo. That looks like dynamic punch. Dodge it, Chasepin. Izuku shouted. Kubfu lunged at Chasepin, but Chasepin easily jumped out of the way, dodging the attack. Now use Mud Shot. Izuku ordered. Chasepin opened his mouth and unleashed a close-ranged Mud Shot right in Kubfu's face, causing it to slide back a few feet as he dug his feet into the dirt and his speed lowered. Alright, now follow up with Vine WHP. Izuku commanded. Cheese. Chespin's vines came out and went to slap Kubfu, but Kubfu was suddenly covered in a red aura, and took the attack head-on, flinching a bit at the pain, before rushing forward and punching Chasepin away. Pin. Chase-Bin went flying from the force of the impact, landing on its back a few feet away. That was counter. Izuku realized he had to be a bit more careful with moves like Bite and Vine WHP. Chase-Bin used Leech Seed. Chase-Bin got up, and opened its mouth, shooting out glowing seeds. Kubfu dodged to the side, avoiding the attack before its arms and legs glowed sky blue, and it charged at Chase-Bin with great speed, smashing it on the head. Cheese! Chase-Bin cried out in pain, as his head now had a nasty bruise. Aerial Ace. Izuku grit his teeth. Chase-Bin, use Bite. Chase-Bin brought his head forward and bit down on Kubfu's side. Now use Leech Seed. Izuku ordered. While still holding on to Kubfu in his mouth, Chase-Bin shot out Leech Seed point blank. The seeds embed themselves into Kubfu's skin, slowly draining its life force and giving it to Chase-Bin. Kubfu charged up another dynamic punch, and at this rank, it wouldn't miss. Chase-Bin use Vine WHP and throw it away. Izuku commanded. Cheese! Before Kubfu could finish charging its attack, Chase-Bin released it from its jaw and used its vines to throw Kubfu a couple yards away. Kubfu cancelled dynamic punch and got up, its arms glowing sky blue once more as it got ready to use Aerial Ace. Not again. Chase-Bin used Mud Shot. Izuku shouted. Pin. Chase-Bin opened its mouth and shot out mud bullets at Kubfu as it was charging at Chase-Bin, getting hit in the face, interrupting the attack, and causing Kubfu to stagger and its speed to lower. Alright, Chase-Bin, with its speed lowered, we should have a much easier time, Izuku said. Kubfu heard that and seemed to realize the situation it was in. And so it charged up a dynamic punch when it was nowhere near Chase-Bin. Izuku looked confused. What is it Fu? Kubfu then punched the ground, all that power causing it to shake and tremble, causing Chase-Bin to lose its footing and trip. This was seemingly what Kubfu was waiting for, as he jumped up into the air, and charged up a dynamic punch. Chase-Bin was caught off guard, and he couldn't get to his feet and run away fast enough. Izuku was stunned at this sudden display of tactics, and couldn't give out any orders in time. But as Kubfu's powerful dynamic punch was coming down on him, Chase-Bin felt the need to at least fight back. Chase-Bin pet its own fist back, and felt a deep, fearsome power, as his arm glowed bright green. Cheese. Pin. The two glowing fists collided, making a big explosion of force, and kicking up dust everywhere. When the dust died down, Chase-Bin was heavily damaged, and confused, but Kubfu was knocked a few feet away, and was completely unconscious. I won. Izuku hurriedly pulled out a Pokeball and threw it at the unconscious legendary. The ball hit, sking Kubfu into it before falling onto the ground. BRRP 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 ding. I did it. I caught a legendary. Izuku shouted at the top of his lungs, running over to grab both Chase-Bin and the Pokeball containing his new Pokémon. We did it. Cheese, Chespin said, his head bobbing around, as it was still confused. Oh, right. I'll let you recover in your Pokeball. Izuku said, putting Chase-Bin back in his Pokeball. You really did it, Midoriya. Congratulations. Ochiko said, celebrating this momentous occasion with Izuku. But what was that last move Chase-Bin used? That was Wood Hammer, I think, Izuku said. He must have just learned it. Well, wasn't that lucky, Torino said. If he hadn't learned that move when he did, you might have found the battle quite unwinnable. Yeah, a good dynamic punch can change the course of a battle. It's hard to hit, but it's powerful and causes confusion, so if it wasn't for Chase-Bin learning Wood Hammer I probably would have lost. Izuku nodded in agreement. I'll have to do better in the future. That's right, you will. Torino huffed. With that kind of skill, it's a wonder you made it up and down the mountain. Well, hopefully, we have enough skill to get past this city's gym leader, Izuku said. Torino snorted in amusement. Boy, this city is home to the 8th gym leader. Do you even have a single badge? Oh. Well, it's a good thing we didn't go there first, would have gotten destroyed. Ochako gave an awkward laugh as she imagined how embarrassing that would be. The first gym leader is in Geonosis City, just after Route Torino explained. Now get. I'm tired. Oh, okay, sir. Thank you so much. Izuku said as he and Ochako were practically pushed out of the house by the tiny old man. Once they were outside, the two looked at each other and wondered what they should do next. Somachi. Ochako felt kind of bad for asking considering how much he helped her, but considering she just did him a major favor she felt a bit more comfortable asking. Izuku smiled brightly, and far more confidently than he ever had before. Of course. XXXXXXX, so maybe he splurged a bit. Who could blame him? He was excited. The two trainers were sitting at a cafe, eating mochi, while their Pokémon all enjoyed some puffins nearby. Ochako practically melted in her seat, with a look of pure bliss on her face. This is the best. At this rate, I'll never pay off my debt to you. I think you've more than paid off that debt, not that I was holding you to it anyway, Izuku told her. Without you, I would have never beat that Pangoro. I mean, in theory you could have just lowered its speed like you did, and then used Leech Seed to lower its health until it passed out. Ochako speculated. Yeah, that probably would have been the best option I could have done all by myself, but even then I doubt it would have worked. Izuku retorted. That thing took 3 air cutters that were super effective, boosted by 4 ancient power boost, by the 25% rivalry boost, and was being boosted by Helping Hand, which boosts the power of its next attack by 50%. It would have taken me hours to wait for Leech Seed to drain it that much, and I doubt Eevee and Chasepin had that much stamina or could dodge for that long. Yeah, I doubt I could do something like that either. Ochako giggled as she imagined how impossible that sounded. But we make a super great team. Yeah, I don't think there is a single Pokémon that can beat the two of us together. Izuku said confidently. All their Pokémon cheered at that, except Kubfu, who was new and thus didn't have the same enthusiasm. Speaking of the Pokémon, Pidove was now trying to snuggle up to Kubfu, who was very, very confused, while Chasepin was giving them a look that said, "Thank Arceus it isn't me," and Eevee just rolled their eyes. Togepi came over and offered their Puffin to Chasepin, as if asking him to try a different flavor, and so Chasepin offered its flavor of Puffin to them. So, should we head to Route 2 tonight and look for somewhere to camp, or should we stay at the Pokémon Center tonight? Ochako asked him. I think we should stay at the Pokémon Center, Izuku said. It's getting late, and we've both had a pretty exhausting day. And besides, who knows what dangers could lurk at night. XXXXXXXXX. Meanwhile, in the streets of Geonosis, the first gym leader, Tensei Ida, was looking around for something. Or rather someone. Man, those reports better not have been fake. The gym leader muttered. They're not. Said a voice from above. Tensei immediately turned his head upward and saw a man standing on a lamppost, in a Team Plasma uniform, with the hood down, and his black hair flowing in the wind. The man jumped down and glared at Tensei intensely. Sothat some kind of weird cosplay? Tensei asked him, not at all fazed. Because if I recall, Team Plasma disbanded years ago, and Getsus is Dash, I do not follow that devil. The man spat. I am loyal only to our king. Oh, your first-generation Team Plasma. The ones that actually believed in all that releasing Pokémon for their own sake, thing. Tensei realized. Didn't you guys learn your lesson or something? Those fools who stayed behind. They do not see how Pokémon suffer. The man said. Perhaps under the care of certain trainers, Pokémon can flourish, but some must be liberated from the hands of gray and abusive trainers. That I agree with, Tensei said. So what do you want exact? I am here. Because my king is here. The man said, interrupting him. Tensei gave him a confused look. Your king. You mean yes, the true king of Team Plasma, and the one who ended that pathetic man gets us. The man went on. He is here. And you will tell me where he is. Okay, why on earth would I know where N is? Tensei asked him. I didn't even know he was in this region. I doubt anyone does, that guy is elusive. The man gave him a displeased growl and then turned away. Humph. Well, then we have nothing to discuss. That's not quite true, Tensei said. Earlier I got reports that a man in a Team Plasma uniform attacked and brutally injured a man. And I haven't seen anyone else wear a Team Plasma uniform around here. That man kicked his Joltik after he lost a battle. He deserved what happened to him. The man said. Okay, releasing someone else's Pokémon, I understand that. Still illegal to do without a permit, but I understand. Tensei said, before giving the man a serious look. But you nearly killed a man, and for that, I can't let you run free. Tensei then took out a Pokeball and released his Durant. The man paused and turned to look at Tensei. You think that some should have been let go? I don't think you should have almost killed him, no, Tensei answered. I hate Pokemon abusers, but that was a step too far. Humph, fine. Then you can share his fate. The man took out a Pokeball and released a Togekiss. My name is Kaizo Makaguro, Stain, and you will regret this encounter. Okay. It's part fairy type, so I should be able to go against it fairly well. Tensei thought. Tailwind. Kaizo mortared. Kiss. Togekiss flapped there. Wings that were glowing bright white, and wind started blowing from behind them. Durant use flash cannon. Tensei orders. Durant. A ball of metal gray energy formed in Durant's mouth, before firing at Togekiss. Dodge it. Kaizo mortared. And then used Thunder Wave. Togekiss easily dodged Durant's attack, before getting closer, and firing off an electric wave that hit Durant. Durant winced as electricity crackled around it, signifying that it now had the paralysis status. Okay. Tailwind, and paralysis. This could be annoying. Tensei grit his teeth, as he planned on how to take down Togekiss. Now use Attract, Kaizo mortared. Oh come on. Tensei shouted. Durant used Dig to dodge it. Durant tried to move, but the paralysis kicked in, making it unable to follow to command, while Togekiss shot out hearts that surrounded Durant, before hitting, it causing hearts to appear in Durant's eyes. Now use Sweet Kiss. Kaizo followed up. I hate you. Tensei deadpanned. Durant, when it gets close, use Metal Claw. Unfortunately, while under the spell of Attract, Durant didn't comply, and so Togekiss just went down and kissed Durant on the head. Rant. Durant said happily, even though it was now confused. Now just keep using air slash till it faints, Kaizo mortared. You are the sum of the earth. Tensei shouted. Togekiss flew into the air, and rained air slashes down onto Durant, and was completely and utterly helpless to do anything but just stand there and take it. Until eventually, it fainted. Alright, that was some bullshit. Tensei didn't like to curse, but if there was ever a time, it was now. But that's not gonna happen again. Come out Klinklang. Clink. The gear Pokemon came out, ready to battle. Alright, since it's electric it can't be paralyzed, and since its gender is unknown, no more Attract shenanigans. Tensei thought. Now use Autotomize. Clang. The gear Pokemon's gear started turning rapidly, as the Pokemon got both lighter and faster. Use Swagger, Kaizo commanded. Kiss. Togekiss lifted its head up arrogantly, causing Klinklang to glow red as its attack stat increased, but it became confused. Of course you know that move, Tensei muttered bitterly. Klinklang, use Electric Terrain. Clang. Fortunately, Klinklang managed to break through the confusion, and sent out a surge of electric energy around them, encompassing the battlefield in an electric yellow color. Encore, Kaizo ordered. Suddenly, a light from above came down on Klinklang, forcing it to repeat its previous move, in this case, electric terrain, which since it was already up, would do nothing. Now use air slash on repeat, Kaizo ordered. Once again, Kaizo unleashed a barrage of air slashes, and poor Klinklang could do nothing. Most of the time it just flinched, but when it didn't it would either just fail to use electric terrain, or get confused until it was knocked out. Tensei was extremely annoyed, but now, he had a plan. He returned Klinklang, and sent out his next Pokémon. Come out, Togedemaru. 2. Togedemaru shouted out happily, as it was pumped up and ready to fight. Attract, Kaizo ordered. Agility. Tensei shouted. Togekiss shot out hearts at Togedemaru, but Togedemaru was encompassed in blue light, and dodged the attack, as his speed increased. Alright, now use Thunderbolt. Tensei shouted. Demaru. Togedemaru shouted as he unleashed a bolt of lightning at Togekiss. Kaiasis. Togekiss cried out in pain as it was hit with a super effective move that was also enhanced by the terrain. Once the attack was finished, Togekiss's body crackled with electricity, signifying that it was now paralyzed. Ha! Take that! Tensei shouted. How do you like it? Humph, don't celebrate yet. Kaizo returned Togekiss, searching her out for a new Pokémon. Bisharp, come out. Sharp. The bladed Pokémon came out, blades drawn and ready to slice. Use mean look, Kaizo ordered. Bye. Bisharp's eyes glowed bright red, keeping Tensei from being able to SWCH Pokémon. He must think that Togedemaru is a threat. Tensei analyzed. Alright, Togedemaru use agility. Taunt. Kaizo ordered. Right before Togedemaru could use agility, Bisharp taunted him with his finger, urging him to attack, disabling any non-attacking moves. Rue. Togedemaru growled in anger. Alrighty then, Togedemaru lay out some electrowebs. Tensei ordered. Maru. Togedemaru shot webs made of electricity all over the battlefield, limiting Bisharp's movement options. Bisharp, use scary face, Kaizo ordered. Sharp. Bisharp's face glowed red, as Togedemaru's speed lowered by one stage. Thunderbolt. Tensei ordered. Toge. Togedemaru charged up to shoot a lightning bolt at Bisharp, who would have a hard time dodging with all those electrowebs all over the place. Bisharp, get into the air, and use air slash on the webs, Kaizo commanded. Bye. Bisharp jumped up dodging the thunderbolt before the blades on its arm glowed, and it shot out an air slash at the electrowebs destroying them. Gotcha. Togedemaru used discharge. Tensei shouted. Maru. Togedemaru quickly unleashed an explosion of electricity, and since Bisharp was still in the air, it had no chance of dodging. Sharp. Bisharp shouted out in pain, as it was shocked by the discharge, and knocked to the ground. Torment, Kaizo said. Sharp. Bisharp jumped back up, and its body glowed red. Sharp. Maru. Togedemaru shouted back. Alrighty then, Togedemaru, use Electro Ball, Tensei said. Togedemaru raised his tail, and at the tip, a ball of electricity formed, before it was shot out at Bisharp. The ball was coming at Bisharp fast, and dodging might not be an option. Slash. Kaizo orders. Bisharp. The blades on Bisharp's arms grew, and glowed white, as Bisharp slashed the attack in half. Now Thunderbolt, Tensei ordered. Togedemaru shot out a lightning bolt at Bisharp, who was still recovering from its swing at the Electro Ball, and Bisharp was shocked by the attack. Sharp. Bisharp once again cried out in pain, before it dropped to one knee. After that, the electric terrain faded, and Stain's tailwind subsided. Now, agility. Tensei ordered, figuring that the taunt would have worn off by now. Toge. Togedemaru started running around in a circle, its body being covered in a blue energy, as its speed increased by 2 stages. Swords dance. Kaizo ordered. Bisharp struck its blades together in a particular fashion, increasing his attack by 2 stages. Now, use Electro Ball. Tensei shouted. Togedemaru shot out a ball of electricity, this time going even faster. Use Night Slash. Bisharp's arm blades grew and glowed black as it charged forward to cut the ball in half, but since Togedemaru's speed was higher, that meant the power of Electro Ball was also higher. Bisharp was struggling a bit to cut it. Zin Zap. Tensei followed up. Demaru. Togedemaru curled up in a ball and was surrounded with electricity, before he charged forward, at Bisharp. The shorter Pokémon smacked into Bisharp's legs, causing it to lose its battle with the Electro Ball, and take a direct hit. Sharp. Bisharp cried out. Togedemaru uncurled after it reached the other side, and turned back towards Bisharp. Bisharp tried to get up, but it flinched. Now, use Thunderbolt. Tensei shouted out enthusiastically. Demaru. Togedemaru shot out one more Thunderbolt. The attack landed, hitting Bisharp, causing a small explosion. When the smoke cleared, Bisharp was on the ground, knocked out. Kaizo grits his teeth, as he returned his Pokémon, before taking out a strange-looking Pokeball. Well. I suppose now would be a good time to test the power of this thing. Tensei repeated with a confused expression. Humph, come out, Kartana. Kaizo said. Out of the strange Pokeball, was a small, paper-like Pokémon. Looking like it was made out of origami. What on earth is that? Tensei took out his old Pokédex and attempted to scan it. Pokémon unknown. The Pokédex said. What? An unknown Pokémon. Tensei shouted out in surprise, before shaking his head, and looking back up towards the battle. Doesn't matter. We'll figure out what this is when I take you down. Now, use Zin Zap. Toj. Togedemaru rolled back up into an eclectic ball and charged at Kartana. Detect, and then Sacred Sword, Kaizo ordered. There was a glint in Kartana's eye before it dodged over Togedemaru, its arm glowing, and then it slashed Togedemaru. 2. Togedemaru was sent flying, that single attack doing way too much damage, even for a super effective move. What? Tensei was shocked by how hurt Togedemaru seemed by that attack. It was abnormal. What kind of power does that thing have? Aerial Ace, Kaizo ordered. The Kartana glowed blue, before moving at marvelous speeds towards the still-down Togedemaru, and slashing them. Toj. Togedemaru said weakly, as they were knocked away once more, and fainted when they hit the ground. How did it so strong? Tensei said. Ino. I have to keep a cool head. Togedemaru, come back now, come out, Aegislash. Tensei suched out the electric steel type, for his ghost steel type, Aegislash. Slash. Aegislash cried as it came out. Humph. I need to look out for King's Shield. Kaizo said. Use Double Team. Car. 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 Suddenly Aegislash was surrounded by clones of Kartana. DMN use Autotomize. Tensei ordered. Aegislash's blade tip hit the ground, as it grinded itself across the floor, reducing its weight and increasing its speed by 2 stages. Night Slash. Kaizo ordered. The many clones of Kartana's arm glowed with dark energy, and they converged on Aegislash. Now use Aerial Ace. Tensei shouted. Aegislash shifted into its attacking form, as its blade glowed bright blue, and it spun around in a circle very quickly, destroying all the Kartana clones, until its blade clashed with the real Kartana. Ha! Gotcha! Tensei said before he saw something that quickly destroyed his excitement. Kartana immediately overpowered Aegislash, hitting the attack, winning over, and hitting Aegislash, knocking it aside. Slash. Aegislash croaked, as it fainted. Getting taken out in one hit. DMN, that thing is strong. Tensei was now extremely nervous. He had to take this thing down. Aegislash return. Come out, Sizer. Tensei sent out his signature Pokémon a bit early. But he needed to take out this thing immediately. Zor. Sizer's claws were sharp and ready for action. Double team. Tensei ordered. Zor. 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 An army of Sizer clones appeared in front of Kartana, glaring at the thing menacingly. Now use agility. Tensei ordered. Tailwind. Kyzome countered. While the Sizer clones ran around Kartana, increasing their speed 2 stages, while a wind blew behind Kartana, increasing their speed. Now swords dance. Tensei ordered, hoping that Kyzome would hold off on attacking because of the clones. He was wrong. Solar Blade, Kyzome ordered. Oh no, Tensei said, but it was too late. Sizer was already using Sword Dance, while Kartana was busy charging up energy. Tan. Katana's arm turned into a massive energy blade, and it was about to sweep through Sizer and all its clones. Jump. Tensei ordered. The real Sizer managed to go up into the sky, but the solar blade swept through all the clones, destroying them. Bullet punch. Tensei shouted. Sizer's claw was surrounded in a steel aura. Detect. Kyzome shouted. But it was too late. By the time Kartana could even start using the move, Sizer was already slamming its claw into its tiny paper body. Car. Kartana shouted, its tiny body was knocked back. Keep using bullet punch. Tensei shouted. Sizer. Zor. 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 Sizer rapidly attacked Kartana, using the power of bullet punch along with its boosted speed to get in as many attacks as possible. Detect. Kyzome shouted. Use quick attack to get away. Tensei shouted. Kartana used detect, dodging the last bullet punch, but before it could counterattack, Sizer was surrounded in a white aura, as it dashed back with immense speed. Aerial Ace. Kyzome shouted. Kartana's arm glowed blue, and it charged towards Sizer with that same speed. Keep using quick attack to dodge. Tensei shouted. Sizer was coated in a white aura once more, dodging Kartana as the tiny Pokémon chased them. Air slash, Kyzome shouted. As Kartana was chasing Sizer, it suddenly shot a slash of sharp air at them, hitting Sizer dead on. Zor. Sizer cried out in pain, as it got hit by the attack. Now finish it, Night Slash, Kyzome ordered. Kartana's blade glowed, turning black, as it charged towards Sizer. Dodge it. Tensei shouted. Sizer tried to move, but it flinched. Kartana's attack landed, knocking Sizer away and onto the ground, knocked out. DMN it. Tensei knew that battle was most likely lost at this point. With his ace defeated, and him only have one Pokémon left, even if he took down this Pokémon, he'd have to take down 4 more. But even then, he had to at least try. Sizer return. Tensei swapped to his last Pokémon. Come out, Doug Trio. Doug. The triple mole Pokémon came out, waving its blonde hair around as it got ready to fight. Humph, pointless. Kyzome huffed. Kartana use Aerial Ace. Sucker Punch. Tensei ordered. Just as Kartana was about to attack, Doug Trio popped under the ground, before popping out, and instantly hitting Kartana. Car. Kartana grunted as they were thrown back. At the very least it was clear all those attacks did a number on it, just a few more good hits and they would fall. And so that may have caused Tensei to get a bit greedy. Stone Edge. Tensei shouted. Suddenly, the ground under Kartana became sharp rocks, ready to rocket up and hit them. Detect, and then air slash, Kaizo ordered. As the stones flew up at Kartana, the tiny Pokémon dodged each razor-sharp stone, before hovering up, and shooting an air slash at Dugtrio. Try! Dugtrio shouted in pain, as it got hit. And it flinched. Oh come on. Tensei cursed his terrible, terrible luck. Finish it. Sacred sword. Kaizo shouted. Kartana charged forward, its blade arm glowing. The attack landed, knocking Dugtrio unconscious. And with that, Tensei had lost the battle. DDMN it. Tensei cursed, as he looked down at his fainted Pokémon. And then he looked up, and Kartana was floating menacingly in front him. The last thing Tensei felt before losing consciousness, was a sharp pain.